In the middle of a show, Elvis noticed a fan in the front row who was clearly unwell. He stopped everything to help and thought it would end there. But the very next day, thousands of fans packed his concert holding signs that read, "Thank you, Elvis." In this video, you'll see the moment that started it all, and why it became one of the most heartfelt chapters in the King's career. It happened during what should have been just another electrifying performance. The arena was alive with energy that night. People were on their feet, singing along to every word, their voices creating a wall of sound that filled every corner of the massive venue. Elvis owned that stage completely. He moved with the confidence of someone who had performed for crowds like this hundreds of times before. The spotlight followed him as he worked his way across the platform, his signature white jumpsuit catching the light with every step. The crowd was deafening. Fans pressed against the barriers in the front rows, reaching their hands toward their idol. Camera flashes went off like lightning strikes throughout the arena. Elvis was in the middle of one of his biggest hits, his voice carrying over the roar of the audience. This was Elvis in his element, commanding the attention of every single person in that packed venue. The energy was electric, the kind that makes your skin tingle and your heart race. But something was wrong in the front row. A young fan appeared to be in serious distress. While everyone around them was jumping and screaming, this person was swaying unsteadily, gripping the barrier for support. They looked like they were struggling to stay upright. In the chaos of flashing lights and screaming fans, this one person was clearly having trouble. Spotting one individual in a crowd that size should have been impossible. The stage lights created a barrier between performer and audience, turning the crowd into a sea of shadowy figures. The noise was overwhelming, the movement constant. Most performers would never notice a single person in distress among so many faces. But Elvis wasn't most performers. He often reached toward the crowd and connected personally during shows, making every person feel like he was singing directly to them. Elvis had developed an unusual ability to read his audience. Even in the largest venues, he could pick out individual faces and notice when something wasn't right. This connection wasn't just part of his performance. It was who he was. He genuinely cared about the people who came to see him, and he paid attention to them in ways that set him apart from other entertainers. That's when Elvis's expression changed. His smile faded as his eyes locked onto the struggling fan in the front row. You could see the exact moment he realized something was seriously wrong. His body language shifted completely. The performer disappeared, and in his place stood a man who had just witnessed someone in need of help. The music was still playing. The crowd was still screaming, but Elvis's focus had narrowed to that one person who needed help. Elvis faced a choice that would define the entire evening. He could continue the show and hope someone else would notice the fans' distress, or he could stop everything. He made his decision instantly. He stopped singing mid-verse, the words cutting off so abruptly that the music cut off with him. He walked straight to the edge of the stage, his eyes never leaving the distressed fan. Without hesitation, he pointed directly at them, his gesture cutting through the confusion. The crowd began to quiet, sensing that something important was happening. Security teams scrambled to understand what had captured their star's attention so completely. What Elvis did in that moment would break every rule of live performance. Elvis raised his voice over the stunned crowd, calling out to his security team with urgency in his tone. He gestured emphatically toward the front row, making it clear that immediate action was needed. His commands cut through the arena's silence like a whip crack. Security personnel rushed toward the area he indicated, but Elvis wasn't satisfied with their pace. He paused the performance and insisted that the fan receive immediate attention before he would continue. The king of rock and roll had transformed into a man determined to save a life. When Elvis spoke, people listened. When he pointed, they moved. His authority in that arena was absolute, and he wielded it completely for this fan's benefit. Security guards who normally controlled crowd access suddenly found themselves taking orders from Elvis about medical assistance. Arena staff who usually worried about lighting and sound equipment were now focused entirely on getting help to the front row. Elvis had turned his entire organization into a rescue operation. The fans' condition was deteriorating rapidly. They were barely conscious now. Their skin had taken on an alarming pallor. Their breathing was becoming more labored. Without Elvis's intervention, this person could have easily been overlooked in the chaos of the concert environment. Security might not have noticed until it was too late. The crowd around them was so focused on the stage that they hadn't registered the medical emergency happening right beside them. Tension filled the arena as everyone waited to see if Elvis's quick thinking would be enough. Medical personnel were being called, but would they arrive in time? The fan looked like they might collapse at any moment. Elvis paced at the edge of the stage, his eyes never leaving the person who needed help. His usual stage presence was completely gone, replaced by genuine concern for a stranger's well-being. The seconds stretched out like hours as the help made its way through the crowded venue. When medical assistance finally arrived, Elvis didn't step back and return to his show. Instead, he leaned over the stage barrier and spoke directly to the struggling fan. His words were quiet, meant only for them, but his body language spoke volumes to everyone watching. He stayed right there, maintaining that personal connection, offering comfort and reassurance while the medical team worked. Elvis treated this person not like a faceless fan in a crowd, but like someone who mattered deeply to him. Elvis remained at the edge of the stage until the fan was stabilized and safely removed from the venue. Only after he was certain they were receiving proper care did he finally step back from the barrier. The relief on his face was visible even from the back rows of the arena. He took a deep breath, ran his hands through his hair, and looked out at the thousands of people who had just witnessed something extraordinary. They weren't just fans anymore. They had become witnesses to an act of pure human compassion that transformed the entire evening. What happened next would create a moment that nobody in that arena would ever forget. Elvis slowly walked back to center stage to face a sold-out crowd who had just witnessed something extraordinary. The silence was complete now. Not a single voice called out. Not a single person moved. Every eye in that massive venue was fixed on Elvis as he stood there, his usual stage costume slightly wrinkled from leaning over the stage barrier. His hair was no longer perfectly styled. His usual confident stage presence had been replaced by something much more vulnerable and real. The question hung in the air like electricity. How do you continue a concert after such an emotional interruption? How do you go back to singing love songs and crowd favorites when everyone just watched you stop everything to save a stranger's life? Elvis looked out at the sea of faces staring back at him. These weren't just fans anymore. They were witnesses to something that had nothing to do with entertainment and everything to do with basic human decency. Elvis stepped up to his microphone and addressed the crowd directly. His voice was different now, quieter and more personal than his usual performance tone. He told the audience why he'd stopped the show, explaining that someone in the crowd needed help and that helping people was more important than any song he could ever sing. His words were simple and honest. There was no showmanship, no attempt to turn the moment into entertainment. He was just a man talking to other human beings about doing the right thing. The transformation happened in waves. The confusion that had filled their faces moments before shifted to understanding, then deepened into something more profound. You could see it spreading row by row, section by section. People began to realize what they had just experienced. Their hero hadn't just performed for them tonight. He had shown them who he really was underneath all the fame and glitter. The applause started slowly. One person began clapping, then another. But this wasn't the usual screaming and cheering that filled Elvis concerts. This was something completely different. People were applauding not for his voice or his moves or his charisma. They were clapping for his humanity. The sound built steadily, becoming thunderous, but it carried a different quality than concert applause. It was the sound of respect and genuine admiration for a person's character. Elvis resumed his performance, but everything had changed. The band picked up their instruments and found their places again. The lights came back up. The familiar opening notes of his next song filled the arena, but the atmosphere was unlike anything any of them had experienced before. Elvis sang with more emotion than usual, his voice carrying the weight of the moment they had all shared. Every word seemed more meaningful, every note more sincere. The crowd sang along with renewed appreciation for their hero. Their voices joined his with an intensity that went far beyond typical fan enthusiasm. They were singing with someone they now saw as more than just an entertainer. He was a person who cared about others, who would risk his own performance to help a stranger in need. The connection between Elvis and his audience had deepened in a way that no scripted performance could ever achieve. The concert became legendary not for the music, but for the moment when Elvis proved he cared more about people than performance. People who were there that night would spend the rest of their lives telling others about what they witnessed. They would describe not just the songs Elvis sang, but the man they discovered he truly was. Word of this act began spreading before the arena lights even dimmed, but what no one could have predicted was how powerfully his fans would respond. Phone calls started early the next morning, ringing in homes throughout Memphis and beyond. Fans who had been at the concert couldn't stop talking about what they had witnessed. They called their friends, their family members, other Elvis fans they knew. The story of Elvis stopping his show to help a sick fan spread from person to person with an urgency that surprised everyone involved. Word of Elvis's compassionate act spread through Memphis faster than any publicity campaign could have achieved. Local radio DJs picked up the story and shared it on their morning shows. Newspaper reporters started making calls to verify what had happened. Fan club presidents found their phones ringing constantly as members wanted to discuss what they had seen. Beauty salon conversations centered around Elvis's act of kindness. Coffee shop discussions turned to what it meant to witness such genuine compassion from their hero. Fans felt compelled to respond. But how do you thank someone who already has everything? Elvis had fame, fortune, and the adoration of millions. What could ordinary people possibly give him that he didn't already possess? The answer came from a group of fans who met at a local diner that morning. They realized that Elvis had given them something priceless the night before. He had shown them his true character, and they wanted to show him theirs in return. The story traveled through fan networks with remarkable speed. Elvis fan clubs had established communication systems that stretched across the country. Club leaders knew how to reach their members quickly when something important happened. Word spread through record stores where fans gathered to buy the latest Elvis releases. An organic grassroots movement began forming as fans coordinated their response. The original group at the diner had an idea, but they needed help to make it work. They contacted fan club leaders across the city. They reached out to people who organized Elvis events and gatherings. Within hours, a network of dedicated fans was working together on a plan that would require precise timing and massive coordination. Fans across the city organized quickly through local fan clubs and word-of-mouth networks. They gathered in church basements, community centers, and private homes to create thousands of identical signs. Each sign had to be the same size and color to create the visual impact they were hoping for. Teams of volunteers worked with poster board, markers, and rulers, carefully lettering messages and attaching handles. The scale of organization required to coordinate so many people was staggering, but their determination matched their gratitude. Elvis's next scheduled concert created the perfect opportunity for their planned gesture. The timing had to be exact. Every person holding a sign needed to raise it at precisely the same moment for maximum effect. Fan club leaders coordinated the distribution throughout different sections of the arena. Each volunteer knew exactly when and where to position themselves with their assigned signs. Organized groups prepared signs and arranged for them to be revealed at the next concert. The volunteers worked carefully to ensure arena security wouldn't discover the plan in advance. The message had to remain hidden until the perfect moment. Every section of the arena had been covered through careful coordination. By the time of Elvis's next performance, fans had organized what would become one of the largest coordinated thank you gestures in concert history. Thousands of handmade signs waited to be revealed. The volunteers had done their work perfectly. The message was ready to be shown. As Elvis prepared to take the stage that night, he had no idea what awaited him in that arena. When the lights came up and Elvis walked into the spotlight, he saw something that stopped him in his tracks. The arena was packed again with another sold-out crowd. The familiar roar of excited fans filled the air. But as Elvis appeared on stage, something was visibly different. The energy felt charged with anticipation beyond normal concert excitement. Elvis looked out at the crowd and slowly began to realize what thousands of fans had coordinated to show him. At first, he saw scattered white rectangles throughout the audience. He couldn't make out what they were. Then, as if responding to an invisible signal, fans throughout the entire arena began raising signs above their heads. Row after row, section after section, thousands of handmade signs appeared simultaneously across the venue. The breathtaking visual created a sea of gratitude that stretched from the front row to the highest balcony seats. The signs reading, "Thank you, Elvis," covered every visible area where fans were seated. The white backgrounds made the black lettering stand out clearly against the arena's dim lighting. The careful coordination was obvious in how perfectly the message aligned across sections. Elvis appeared visibly moved as he processed the magnitude of his fans' gratitude. His confident performer's stride faltered. His mouth opened slightly in shock. His hands went to his chest as if trying to steady his heart. The man who commanded stages around the world suddenly looked vulnerable and deeply affected. He slowly turned his head to take in the full scope of what his fans had created. A powerful silence fell over the crowd. The usual screaming and cheering that greeted his entrance had been replaced by respectful quiet. Fans holding the signs remained perfectly still, wanting Elvis to see their message clearly. Even those not holding signs stood motionless. They understood they were part of something special. The only sounds in the arena were the soft hum of the lighting system and Elvis's footsteps as he moved across the stage. Elvis tried to speak but was too moved to find words immediately. He approached the microphone several times. His mouth opened to address the crowd. Nothing came out. He stepped back, wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, and tried again. His voice cracked when he finally managed to say a few words. He had to pause multiple times to compose himself, clearly fighting back emotion throughout his attempt to respond. What do you do when the whole arena becomes one message? Elvis thanked the crowd, clearly overwhelmed by their incredible gesture. He spoke about what their kindness meant to him. His voice grew stronger as he acknowledged why he had stopped the previous night's show. The signs remained visible throughout the entire concert, creating a backdrop of appreciation that enhanced each moment. Elvis delivered one of his most emotional performances ever. Both he and the audience understood they had shared something truly special. Every song carried extra weight that night. The connection between Elvis and his fans had reached a level that neither side would ever forget. This moment deepened the bond between him and many fans who were there. But more than that, it revealed something profound about what makes a performance truly unforgettable. For many who were there, his greatest performance that night was an act of compassion that inspired thousands to love him even more. That night, he proved something more valuable than any platinum record ever could. When faced with a choice between entertainment and humanity, Elvis chose humanity without hesitation. Share your own Elvis memory in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing for more moments like this. Sometimes the most powerful moments happen when we choose compassion over spectacle, when we remember that behind every face in the crowd is a person who matters.